Alrighty, welcome back. This is the third recording in the series of the MqZ indicator suite. Today we will be covering the sacred geometry indicator. After rewatching my recordings, previous recordings, I noticed that my voice was kind of low, so I increased the mic volume a tiny bit. Hope it's better this way. Okay, let's dive into it. We'll be working with the Bitcoin chart, since this indicator is kind of optimized for Bitcoin in a way. We'll see that in a moment. But yeah, I want to kind of address a couple of things before we start. So let's see. The indicator, let's add it to the chart. Sacred geometry, there we go. This time I'll be working in dark mode, just to kind of mix things up a little bit, and so you guys can also see what dark mode looks like. So it has three sections: sacred geometry frequency, horizontal grid, and vertical grid. Now, if you have seen the very first video that's available on my channel, which would be this one here, decoding the Bitcoin cycle, from a live recording I did back in September 2022 with the guys from the Profit Discord. This kind of goes over how I quote-unquote discovered or kind of started messing around with what is the horizontal grid. So if you want to know more in depth as to how I came about this horizontal grid, once we cover it, if you want more detail on it, then you can go watch that video. The video is kind of scuffed in the way that I messed up some audio recording, so you can't hear the people asking questions. You can only hear my voice. But yeah, that's later in the second half of the video, the Q&A part basically. But the first hour is me just kind of ranting and in terms of like how I discovered this, and at the time what I was kind of like thinking about it. Since then it has evolved a bit. There is kind of like a newer version that I'm using myself, which is not included in this indicator. This is pretty much kind of like the same thing as you see in this video. But here I do it manually with FIP tools, which you can also do if you want. After watching this video, there's like the whole explanation how you can do this manually. But basically this indicator, what it does is just automates that for you, right? So it generates all the lines that I use there just by activating this. The version 2, I will probably make it into a public chart, or not public, a private chart, but that I will share with anybody who buys the suite. Yeah, because it's quite a cool chart, but right now I have to kind of clean it up and stuff, so I'll do that in the future. I'll make a video about it probably, and then yeah, for those that have the indicator, then I will share the link with them so they have access to that particular chart, but I will go over that chart in a separate video. For now, we'll just be dedicated to this indicator specifically. And yeah, so let's begin. A couple of things to get out of the way before I actually start with the indicator stuff. So the sacred geometry, it sounds very esoteric and very, kind of mystical, but it's the way I approach it is not in like a very complicated way with like, triangles and spirals and kind of draw complicated geometry on the chart. I basically, my take on sacred geometry is based around this video here. So if you search for after school and then Randall Carlson, it's this second video, this one, Hidden Sacred Numbers by Randall Carlson. It's a 2-hour-long seminar video that Randall Carlson did with animations from the channel After School, Hidden Mathematics, Ancient Knowledge, Space-Time, Cosmic Cycles. Yeah, so I'll post a link to this video in the description if you want to check it out. I highly recommend it. It's just a very kind of cool video, and it really inspired me to kind of play around with these numbers and kind of see what pops up on the chart, right? So that's basically where my journey started in terms of figuring this stuff out. So kind of a quick overview of like what the video is about and what these numbers mean is, if you take a circle And then you divide the circle. And just, I'm not going to do it perfectly, but kind of you get the idea, right? Then as the circle kind of covers angles and stuff, then this would be 360. Let me just increase the brightness on this a bit so it's a bit better. 360, you have 90. Wait, what is it? 180. There you go. And 270, right? So something to note is that if you add the digits on these numbers, right, you will always get 9. So 9 plus 0 equals 9, right? 1 plus 8, 9. 2 plus 7, 9. And 3 plus 6 is also 9, right? Even if you take the 45 degrees, right? 4 plus 5 is also 9, right? So this is kind of like what he talks about in the video, among many other things. Yeah, the color switched again. But yeah, if you draw a square that fits inside, right? So every geometric shape, you can basically fit it inside the circle, right? You can also create a triangle, right? And all these shapes, so a square is 4 corners of 90 degrees, right? And if you multiply 90 by 4, you get 360 again, right? So every geometric shape basically in the universe that has, like, you know, different angles or whatever, pretty much all their values will always end up to 9 whenever you sum them up, right? And there's like a whole bunch of curious kind of, you know, call it cosmic coincidences that he also kind of mentions in the video. Is, for example, if you take the imperial measuring system, so not the metric one, but the imperial one. So if you calculate stuff in miles, right? The diameter of the moon is very close to 2,160. If you add those numbers together, right? If you take, let me just take a text. What's happening? Text. Here we go. This white so we can see. Probably a bit easier instead of me just drawing it, right? So if you take 2,160, again, if you add all those numbers, 2 plus 1 plus 6, right? It's 9 again, right? If then you take the radius of the sun, or the sun in miles, the diameter of the sun, the radius is obviously just half. It's very close. It kind of depends on the measurement or whatever, like which page you find, but it's roughly 864,000, right? So if we do that, let me edit this, right? So 864,000, right? So we can ignore the zeros. That's basically kind of irrelevant, right? So if you take 8 plus 6 plus 4, 9 equals 2. So you have 6 plus 4 is 10, plus 8 is 18, right? And then you do it again. So you do 1 plus 8 equals 9. See? So there you go again, right? So even if the number adds up to 18 or 27 or whatever, it's always 9. This is also another thing, the scale of 9 itself, right? So if you multiply 9 by any number whatsoever, it doesn't matter at all, right? So 8 times 1, or 9 times 1, 9 times 3, 9 times, I don't know, you know, whatever, 7, right? So this is obviously 9, this is 27, and 7 times 9 is 63, right? And then you can do the same trick again. 6 plus 3 is 9, 2 plus 7 is 9, right? And so on and so forth. So it doesn't really matter which number you multiply 9 with. It will always, if you add all the digits up, there's a name for it, a mathematical name that you can actually, like, for adding all the digits together. I don't remember what it is, but yeah. it always will add up to 9. So some curiosities that you know, the universe seems to like this this sequence for some reason, because you can see it like in terms of planetary bodies and stuff. Apparently, what Randall Carlson in the video also mentions is that the ancient civilizations seem to have known about this. For example, a great example is the Pyramid of Giza that also has a lot of these numbers, particularly the 432,000 appears a lot, which again, 4 plus 3 plus 2 is 9. Right? Here's another tiny detail. So the Earth fits around 108 times within the Sun. So you can fit 108 Earth inside the Sun in terms of width, right? But 108 again, 1 0 and 8 is 9 again, right? So it's over and over and over and over. You see it everywhere. There's nothing, right? So yeah, that's kind of. I mean, to me, it's fascinating that's a pattern. Similar to, for example, I guess the Fibonacci ratio in nature, right? You see it on shells and flowers and stuff. Like, for some reason, nature just loves that particular sequence. And it seems that the sequence of geometry in terms of the circle and the angles of all the geometry, it follows the very particularly the number 9. Something that he doesn't mention in the video, but that's something that I kind of vaguely recall from watching a documentary somewhere, was that back in the day, the number 0 actually didn't exist. I think it was the Arabs, when they were kind of dominating in the biggest empire and stuff, they were actually the ones to come up with the number 0, right? And my intuition tells me that the number 0 actually makes sense if you think about it, that it doesn't exist. If the number 9 is the number that dominates the circle and all the other geometries, right? But if you look at the circle is 0 itself, right? Or like the circle is a 0 in essence, right? So the way I see it is you have all the numbers 1 to 9, 9 being the dominant number in terms of all the geometry in the universe. And then if you take this as a sort of a clock, right? The 0 just represents a completion of the cycle, and then the cycle starts anew, right? Because this is not only 360 degrees, it's also 0 degrees, right? Because it's the start and the beginning and the end, and at the same time, right? That's kind of like how I think about it. So in that sense, at least to me, it kind of makes sense that 9 is the dominant number. It's kind of like the highest number, and the rest are all just derivatives of it in a way. Yeah, so that's kind of like a cool thought experiment. But yeah, there's so much cool stuff around here. Like, I can go for hours and hours and hours and hours, and I don't want to make this video like super long. Let's see, what else was there? Yeah, so let me just delete this. Fuck me, where is the panel? Because, jeez, all the drawings. There we go. So another thing that this is a personal thing that I do. This is actually consistent across all the 3 indicators. I didn't mention it in the previous video on the quantizer, but it follows the same rules as well. Is that in terms of the charts, we have a price scale and we have a horizontal scale of time, right? And when I was thinking about which time frames are the most useful or make the most logical sense to me, I kind of came to the conclusion that the number that makes the most sense in terms of time would be the number 12. Why? Well, let's see. Let me just type this out again. we have 12 months in 1 year. We have roughly, more or less, 12 weeks in a quarter. Right? Because each month has 4 weeks and a few days, and 3 months is a quarter, so 4 times 3 is 12 weeks, roughly speaking. 1 day equals 24 hours. Half a day equals 12 hours. In terms of the charts, if we take the 1 hour chart, for example, right? That would be so if if you take the 12-hour time frame, right, the 12-hour, this one, and you divide it by 12, which gives you obviously 1, then you get the 1 hour time frame, right? So let me just type this out. 1 candle on the 1 candle. I am just candle. There we go. On the 12-hour equals 12 candles on the 1 hour, and 12 candles on the 5 minute equal 1 candle on the 1 hour, right? Because if you divide 1 hour, which equals 60 minutes, divided by 12, it gives you 5. And 60 divided by 12 is 5. Right? So there's a nice correlation in terms of the number 12. Right? If you also consider the number 12, right, out of all the numbers of double digits, the first sequence of it, so you have, what I mean is like 11, 12, 13, etc., until you reach 20, basically, right? But if you take the number 12, it is the most divisible number. What does it mean? Well, you can divide it by, obviously, itself. You can divide it by 6. You can divide it by 4, and you can divide it by 3, and you can divide it by 2. Right? There's no other number that can do this. And if you take 12 times 2, which equals 24, then this whole sequence applies again, and you can also divide it by 8 at the same time. So I don't think that it's coincidence that our ancestors, whoever the fuck it was that came up with this, divided 1 day of Earth's rotation, right, into 24 hours, right? Because you can subdivide it by the most divisions of any sort of number, if that makes sense, right? Because you can divide it by 12, 6, 8, 4, 3, 2, and obviously 1 and itself 24, right? So this is kind of like why I settled on using, for time-related purposes on the charts, the number 12 and multiples or divisions of 12, right? Anything that has to do with tracking any sort of time on the chart. So if, for example, in the quantizer's case, it's the RSI, right? The RSI, if you add, let me just add it here so you guys can see what I mean, right? Indicator, throw in an RSI, just the basic one. If you go into the settings, right, there's a length, right? And here the length by default is set to 14, right? I think this is just a retarded number. You can divide it by 7 and that's it, or 2, right? Why 14, right? Whoever designed this back in the day and came up with the RSI was probably a day trader, or like in terms of like the daily time frame, and decided that 2 week is a good period, right? Because 14 days is 2 weeks, right? But there's no other logic that I can find behind this that makes any sort of sense, right? it was probably somebody that traded on the daily and the weekly or something like that, or used weekly levels to trade on the daily or something along those lines, and that's why they decided that 14 was a good number, right? Now, if you change this to 12, the RSI actually doesn't change all that much, right? The difference is very, very minimal. But in my case, the way I used the RSI and all the divergence features and so on and so forth, I actually have my RSI running at 12. The MqZ oscillator also runs at a multiple of 12 or division. I don't remember exactly what the number is, but yeah. And basically, from that point onwards, all the three indicators work around the number 12. There's always, and you'll see this in the next video as well on the overlay, that there's, in terms of length, periods of time, or anything along of the sorts, it's always, in my case, a multiple of the number 12, right? So this is kind of the logic behind it as to why I use that number, right? I hope that that makes sense. So just keep that in mind. That, yeah. Right, anything more along that? I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers it. Holy shit, already 20 minutes in. Right, let's dive into it then. So, yeah, same thing applies here. All this stuff is based around the number 12, and let's go. So we'll be running in dark mode this time, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the, I'm not gonna go over the color stuff because I've explained this 2 times already, so you should pretty much be familiar with it now. Dark mode, it's synchronized indicator, and yeah, we're gonna start with the wave. So we'll turn this on. I think I'm gonna lower the opacity slightly. There we go. And yeah, so basically what this is doing is this is the main frequency. So the center one, the white one or gray one, however you want to see it, is the main frequency, and these are derivatives of this frequency. So keep in mind, it's somehow related to the number 12 and sacred geometry numbers and all that kind of jazz. I'm not going to go into like the whole specifics of it. It's not super complicated, but there is, these are drawn by moving averages, obviously, these lines. But yeah, the logic is a little bit more complicated than just, you know, a random, you know, standard moving average. But yeah, so let's see if there's any tooltips regarding this. Yeah, so setting 1 is just the opacity, and setting 2, you can choose between the wave or the ribbon. I'll go over the ribbon in a sec once I finish with the wave, but yeah, the ribbon looks a bit different. And then the wave, and you can also have them both at the same time if you put it on dual mode, right? But let's start with the wave. The tooltip says daily, 12-hour, 8-hour, 6-hour, and 4-hour, right? Remember the divisions of 12 and its multiples and stuff. Note, the frequency wave position is fixed to the daily time frame and is displayed identically all the way down to the 4-hour. Pine script limitations do not allow it to be displayed on any further lower time frames. The frequency ribbon, which we'll go on to later, is displayed on all time frames and recalculates for each individual time frame. Right, so what does it mean? Well, you can see how the wave looks on the daily time frame right now. If you switch to the 12-hour, the wave doesn't change position, so it doesn't adapt to the 12-hour time frame. It's still displaying the daily time frame, basically. Right? So if you pay attention to this area here, right, still the same interaction, right? And if you go down to the 6-hour, for example, let's give it time to load, it's still the same interaction, right? It's still the same wave, and all the way down to the 4-hour, right? Below that, I cannot do this because PineScript will just give out an error because the way how it's calculated, it just doesn't allow to go lower time frame. So yeah, alas. But anyway, it doesn't really matter because this is mostly useful for like higher time frame trading, if you will, or swing trading, if you want to call it. Not so much like low time frame leverage kind of stuff, just more long time frame positioning. I personally use it for like spot positioning, that kind of stuff, right? So let's this is the Bitcoin index chart, which has the most history, so let's just kind of like go all the way back to the beginning. and kind of see how this thing behaves, right? So yeah, the beginning is obviously very volatile and stuff, and you have to give it some time for the wave to kind of settle into its groove, I suppose. But yeah, you can kind of see how it's quite reliable in terms of finding support resistance areas where price tends to kind of react, stall, retest, that kind of stuff, right? So this is the 2013. This is still like, basically the first 4 years of Bitcoin, and here you can kind of start to see like how the Bitcoin charts actually starts kind of respecting these sacred geometry wave number things like quite consistently, right? So the bottom comes in, I mean, literally like dollars, inches from the lowest point of the bands. Kind of goes up, rejects this one, retests the main frequency here, comes back into it, bottoms out pretty much in a very similar fashion again, kind of rides the wave, bottoms again around here, kind of has a little spiky below, right? But you can already kind of see that, yeah, kind of climbs out, rejects the main frequency, comes down, holds the first band as support. Once it kind of breaks through the main frequency, flips it into support, kind of goes up into the first band. The second bottom, right? Because remember, this cycle had kind of like equal kind of lows. The daily closes hold the band, boom, boom, boom. Peaks out very, very close to the top of the top upper band or wave. If you want to, I call it waves in this case. Yeah, we kind of get the next crypto cycle, 2017, right, all the way up. It's still respecting the main frequency as support and kind of keeps dipping into it, and then the blow off top comes when it actually exits the whole wave thing and then comes back into it and creates like a perfect rejection before it finally capitulates down. Falls through, kind of dips deep into the upper half of the lowest band, comes all the way back, retests the main frequency, and so on and so on, right? So you can already kind of see how this works, right? If we go to 2018 bottom in December, again very close to what's the lower end of the wave. Initially rejects the main frequency, but then kind of just drifts through it and starts climbing through the different waves. This is the DeFi summer in 2019. Again, pretty cool rejection there on the top of the wave. You see how it's consistently finds support on the beginning of the second lower wave, then jumps all the way up, rejects the upper lower second wave. COVID dump again, neat little spike right through the bottom of the lower wave, but so on, there we go. And then we get to the last cycle, which again kind of breaks out of the wave, but instantly comes back in, holds this wave here as support, retests it one more time, and then finally starts rejecting the wave. So you can kind of see how it staircase steps kind of like down the wave back to the main frequency, falls through, rejects it, goes down, and then we get here. It spikes into the lower wave, but actually holds it as support. And there we go again, right? So you kind of get the idea of a perfect rejection here as well. Again, perfect spike into the limit of the lowest bands. Again here, finds a bottom when it spikes through and this would be the final bottom from last year, right? And now we are here. But yeah, you can kind of see like after this massive pump, it still finds resistance at the beginning of the second higher wave, then falls through, retests the main frequency, which it just completely ignored when it launched through here, but finds support here, goes for a second try into the second band, really kind of goes into it, but never really reaches the third one, and then starts falling out of it, right? Falls out here, retests the wave, comes all the way down to the main frequency, kind of makes a fake out deviation, whatever, comes back. This time it doesn't retest the second band anymore, it retests the first, and then, yeah, eventually comes back, and now we're kind of struggling with the main frequency again, right? So yeah, you kind of get the idea of what it's doing. But overall, you can see that generally speaking, when price of Bitcoin is in the lowest of the waves, it's generally a pretty decent spot to buy spot Bitcoin, in my opinion, right? We just kind of create a boxy here or something. Let me take one that has a bit of a color or something so I can see it a bit better, right? Like if you bought spot anywhere in this region, right, whenever it kind of creates these spikes, it's a pretty decent spot. Yeah, you had to endure a little bit of a downside here, which 10%, you know. But yeah, it's overall on the longer time period, it's pretty good, right? Because you would still be around, 50-40% in profit, depending on like where you would have entered your spot position, right? But you can kind of use it as a DCA strategy, I suppose. Right, and the same goes for the tops, right? Whenever price starts peaking out or interacting with the upper wave, then yeah, I mean, you know kind of when euphoria is the highest and everybody's laser eyes and bullish and whatever. Yeah, when you see Bitcoin kind of penetrating outside of the wave, you should probably start getting a little bit worried. Yeah, right. Spot position somewhere in this area would have been amazing, right? And yeah, so far in history of Bitcoin, it really hasn't ever closed below the lowest wave in any sort of like meaningful capacity, right? Again, pretty decent spot to buy spot if it's interacting with the lowest part of the wave, and pretty decent spot to sell when it's in the upper part of the wave, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not really much more to it. You can see the values of what the waves are like, right? So if you hold your cursor here, you can actually see like obviously the values. It's just like any other moving average, right? So yeah, you can see the main frequency here, and then it basically just goes from top to bottom, right? So this is the top, this is the bottom, and you can see all the values there. So if you want to, set your targets or something, then you can, let's say you want to enter here and you want to target the first or the second, then you can see the values up here. The first and the second is right there, right? If you hover over it, you can also, like there's a little tooltip that says it, right? You can see, hey, +1, so +1, +2, +3, +4, -1, -2, -3, -4. That makes sense, right? All right. So let's switch this over to the ribbon. Yeah, and sorry, I forgot. So, but I mean, yeah, it's I suppose it's pretty obvious if you're on the wave and you wanna, let's say, you come here, this is kind of happening. You're interacting with the lowest part of the wave, and you kind of want to refine. Then remember that the wave will stay consistent all the way down to the 4 hour. So you could essentially go down to the 4 hour and just kind of like, maybe find a more precise entry by kind of zooming in a little bit and applying your technical analysis of like, I don't know, is there maybe like divergent here or something, and let's say it's reclaiming this level or whatever it happens to be, right? But however you want to do your DA, you can probably like refine your entry a bit. But yeah, it's nice that the wave stays consistent, so you can have a consistent view of it, and it doesn't change whenever you change time frame, right? All right, so let's go over the ribbon. Wave. So we're gonna switch to ribbon. All right, the ribbon is nothing fancy. It's just very similar to, I think it's called the EMA ribbon or something like that. This is just my take on it, and it uses again like sacred geometry values and also the scale of 12 because of what I explained. But yeah, so you know, when price is below and all the moving averages are in a certain position, then the wave kind of turns red or, you know, bearish, and yeah, it indicates that you're in a downtrend. And then when it, you know, price moves up again and the moving averages start flipping over, then it kind of changes color and starts as bullish. If we actually add the, where is it? The quantizer, let's add the quantizer. If you haven't seen the video about the quantizer, I would recommend watching the previous video, as it goes in depth into what the quantizer does and stuff. So we'll put this on dark mode too. We will have the oscillators on. Make the RSI a bit brighter so we can distinguish it. Give it a bit of a thicker line. There we go. Right. Yeah, it's just basically like very similar to EMA ribbon, or I think if you're from the Prophet Discord, I think the Mooney indicator from Roman is also kind of similar to this. It's just a kind of a helpful tool in the sense of, you know, visually indicating if the trend is bullish, bearish, and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty consistent at this one, the one that I have here. Pretty consistent at spotting the kind of retests and deviation points, right? So you can kind of see how it deviates and then start rejecting basically the main ribbon, which is the only number that you see up here, the main frequency ribbon, right? So that's the one that's always either at the bottom or at the top, depending if the trend is bullish or bearish, right? The other ones are less important. It's just more of a visual reference of how far you're deviating away from the main frequency, basically. Yeah, and if we, for example, go to the 4 hour, you'll see that the ribbon is completely different, right? So this one doesn't stay fixed on the daily. This is just, each time frame looks different. Yeah, this is actually the newest addition to the indicator. Before I released it, I just felt that it was missing something for like a little bit of a lower time frame. So this is what I made of it. One thing that that I kind of noticed is on the lower time frames, the retests like this, right? So trend is bullish, right? The wave is green, indicating that the trend is up. When you get these retests, you also usually get like some sort of interaction of the RSI on the 50. Right, again here you get another retest. Again, RSI is kind of like interacting with the 50. Not as close, but yeah, you kind of get the idea. See if we can find some other examples here. Yeah, so here it's, you know, it creates a deviation above the whole thing, but then actually holds it as resistance completely all the time. RSI is like right around the 50 again. Again, slight deviation, rejection of the band, and yeah, RSI, as soon as it dips under 50 is when it kind of, you know, moves away again. Momentum is completely flat here, but yeah, big interaction with the main frequency, and yeah, all this time the RSI is just, you know, in that 50 zone. Yeah, so one of the ways that I tend to kind of use this is because I have this bad luck, or whatever you want to call it, that a lot of the good entry points, trades that I would like to have taken, I think this is a good one if I remember correctly. like, so look at the time, right? For me, this is 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, right? So at this time I'm sleeping. When I wake up, fucking God candle already happened at 7 a.m. because I usually wake up at like, 8, 9 in the morning. And yeah, the entry is just completely gone, right? You want to go long here somewhere, then, it's 3.5% away your stop. It's like, yeah, right? It's kind of annoying because, yeah, for me, the daily close is at 3 a.m. in the morning in the current time zone. So what I tend to like use this for is to kind of wait for price to come back and then hopefully hold the main frequency of the ribbon, as you can see here, right? So I know that if price holds the main frequency and then RSI is interacting with the 50, then this is usually a pretty decent spot to enter. You can, have a bit of a riskier stop right here, right? And you can also then, in the same vein, use it as a way of updating your stop as trend progresses, right? Because if the wave stays bullish, we have a little deviation here, right? And let's say you entered here, or you were actually awake and you managed to get an entry here. Once you get like a decent interaction showing you that either deviation or SFP or something through the main ribbon frequency, but the frequency stays bullish and just kind of continues on, you can, like, if your stop was here, then you can update it to here. When this happens, you can update it to here, and so on and so forth, right? But you kind of wait for that interaction with the main frequency. You wait for that RSI retest of the 50, and then, yeah, you update your stop loss as, trend kind of goes up. So that's kind of two of the ways that I tend to use it. But yeah, I suppose most of you are already kind of familiar with, if you ever have used moving averages, then you probably kind of know how it works, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And then, of course, if you're on the 4-hour or higher, then you can actually run the wave as well. So you can run them in dual mode, and then you have both of them. And yeah, then you can kind of refine your entries a bit better, I guess, right? If you're taking into consideration that, yeah, it looks like it's completely rejecting and keeps rejecting the upper wave, you can, start being a bit more confident that trend might actually stop going up and start shifting, and yeah, you get like a nice final rejection here of the wave. But yeah, let's say you missed this entry, you didn't manage to catch this because, again, this candle happens for me at 7, the next one is at 11. So by the time I go to bed, all I see is basically this giant candle upwards. I'm like, okay, I cannot really, go short here because this is a bullish candle, right? But yeah, then during the night before I wake up, like, that's when the rejection actually happens, and yeah, before you know it, right, boom, big candle down, and your entry here is kind of like, you're too late. So then, yeah, the way I see it is you kind of wait for the deviation or the rejection of the main frequency, and then you can potentially like find a little bit of a better entry and a bit of a tighter stop. Now, obviously, this doesn't work, all the time. Sometimes you get like an even bigger kind of reaction. Don't know if I can find some off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, I guess this works, right? If you were to ignore the wave, obviously, because yeah, after such a big down move, then maybe it's not the best moment to try and short. But yeah, let's say you see something like this happening, you're like, okay, well, now, if trend maybe goes down to actually interact with the wave, like, let's say you're kind of expecting something like this, then yeah, you could potentially, like, say, okay, I missed this entire move, but I want to catch this last little bit. Wait for the interaction with the frequency, put your stop here, and then you obviously get taken out, right? So yeah, it's not perfect, but it's something. Generally, as a rule, I would say the way I use it is I try to catch the first one, right? The first interaction with the after the obvious kind of entry, right? Or trend shift, if you will, right? Because this is on the higher time frame, like the daily bullish diversions, this and that, whatever, right? So if you then look on the daily, right, you got this obvious kind of engulfing candle, which just tells you that, hey, stuff might be turning bullish. And then yeah, you can go to like a lower time frame. If you didn't manage to snipe a perfect entry here at the bottom, then you can maybe potentially use this one, right? Because it's the first interaction with the main frequency of the ribbon. Again, oh, wrong arrow. This one. So main interaction, holding as support the frequency, flipping it bullish, and also interaction with the RSI on the 50. And then yeah, just kind of enter here with like a nice tight stop, and then hope for the best, right? So yeah, that pretty much covers the frequency aspect of this indicator, right? So let's move on to the next one. So the next one is the horizontal grid. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you want to know more about it, check out that video on my channel, this one, the very first one of all. It's from a while ago, it's a live stream, but yeah, if you want to know more about it, then go check that out. But essentially what it does is it just generates all those lines I talk about in that video automatically for you, right? Here we go. Does it work on the weekly? I don't remember. Yeah, it does. Monthly as well. All right. Yeah. So what do I say about this? These are just levels, and for some reason these levels are highly respected. Let's do kind of the same thing again. Go back in history and kind of see how they operate, right? So I guess this is enough. Let me just hide the quantizer again, so we have a bit more screen space. And let me also hide the drawing panel. There we go. Yeah, so these levels are based on like sacred geometry numbers, relationships, and that kind of stuff. You can draw these. Oops. Go away. No. Stop it. There we go. You can activate this on like any chart that you want. They are completely independent of price, so that they don't interact with price action at all, in the sense that they don't need any price action to calculate where they are supposed to be. They're just based on those sacred geometry numbers. And then yeah, they create ranges. So you have the bands, and then you have the dashed lines in the middle, that is the middle of the band, and the dashed lines in between the bands is the midpoint between both bands, basically, right? But yeah, you can see kind of like as the Bitcoin cycle progresses, how there seems to be some validity to it kind of respecting these bands and these lines, right? So that you can kind of see how the midpoint between these bands is kind of like the point of control, that, you know, lots of interactions there until it finally projects and kind of rolls over. But then you can see that kind of like the first actual real reaction is right, arrow again, right here, right, which is a 1-to-1 from here, right? And then from here on out, it kind of bounces off and retests the middle of the band that it previously lost. And then the big spike, big kind of point of control again is right around the middle of the next band below. Right? Yes, it spikes through. Yes, it kind of like, you know, is very volatile and stuff. But overall, in this entire period, you can see that, you know, now it starts respecting this. Come on. This band, right? The spiky also kind of comes down to there. So yeah, it's, you know, a few dollars off, but basically it rejects the midpoint here, and then after a spiky again to the middle of the, or the top of the band, if you will, it finds support again on the 1-to-1 here. Again, kind of a point of control in the middle of the band, you know, perfectly almost to the dollar, rejects the lower part of the band here. On it goes. So yeah, you can use these as you know, zones of interest. The 2018 bottom is like a perfect fit inside the band, basically, right? It falls inside the band, goes to the low point, retouches the high, finally flips the midpoint, and then from there on out, the cycle kind of begins. COVID spikes right into the band as well. Top of DeFi summer is also, again, like 2 bands higher, basically. And then, yeah, if you want to see like something cool, the last cycle, it's still, the first top comes in just a couple of hundred short, and then the actual top, you can see here that, yeah, you know, what you could consider a UTAD, right above the band, and then a perfect rejection here as well. And where does it stop? After the wick, it closes right literally on top of the band, right? So there's something to these numbers. For some reason, it seems that here as well, like perfect bounce of the mid section between the 2 bands, right? And yeah, this is not 40,000, this is 40,000. I don't remember what the number is, but yeah, it's kind of like one of those sacred geometry numbers or something. Right? But yeah, this is basically all that it is. If we go to the bottom in last year, again in kind of like similar fashion, some sort of deviation of the upper part of this band, and then at the end it's kind of like, you know, 2 more nice little retests, and off it goes, right? Where does it find the first area of resistance? Right at the beginning of the other band. Where does it find support after the retrace? Right on the middle of the 2 bands, right? So yeah, basically what this is just another way of finding 1-to-1 ranges that seem to have some sort of importance. And like I said, you can draw this on any chart that you want, right? Because it's irrelevant to price. These levels will always be the same. One thing that I did is the way it works is that it calculates where price is at, like where it began and where it's at currently. So it kind of finds the range that it needs to draw the lines, because I have to draw some sort of limit somewhere that it doesn't keep drawing on forever, right? Because you want to kind of be efficient with the resources. So if we switch to, for example, ETH BTC, it might look a bit different when you zoom out, right? It needs to find the starting point, right? So you have a lot of levels here at the bottom that aren't actually used, but that's because there is a point where it overlaps, basically, right? So if price is within X value and Y value, then it will start drawing the ranges from a certain point and upwards, and then it kind of finds the highest point and will draw ranges up until that highest point, and then as price moves higher, the whole kind of thing will shift upwards and keep drawing higher, basically, right? So it's not that this is the top, that you should consider this like it's never going to go higher than this. No, it actually can go higher than this. It's just that it limits the drawings up until here, because the rest is kind of irrelevant for the time being, right? So if price updates higher, then the ranges will move with price action up, basically. Yeah, but this is the ETH BTC pair, and yeah, you can see that the ranges kind of get respected in like a similar fashion, right? So we're now dealing with Satoshis, and it really doesn't matter. Another like bounce here, pretty decent bounce on this band there, right? 2 bands down is where it kind of finds the bottom, retested the band it came from. And yeah, find support like right in the middle of these 2. You get the idea, right? Which just kind of happens to be a Very important line for some reason. Right. And then, yeah, recent price action. It's after the whole 2021 cycle, it just kind of moves one level up, if you will. Right? And yeah, we spent like over a year now here, right? What's this? May 2021. Yeah, this is like a year and a half, something like that. 2 years. Wait, has it been 2 years? Yeah, fuck me, it's been 2 years already. Holy shit. Yeah, and right now we're on our way back down. So curious to see what will happen around this level. If it's still gonna hold. So that's pretty much it. That's the. You can maybe take a look at maybe Litecoin. I think it also has like a pretty interesting interaction with it, even though the Litecoin chart is permanently down against Bitcoin on the macro scale. But yeah, holds the band, rejects the middle of the band, falls into it, retests it, rejects, goes down to the middle. Wouldn't be surprised if it is on its way down to the low part of the band, right? Basically the deviation on the daily is also a reclaim of this band, right? So yeah, you get the idea. Throw it onto a chart and see if it works for you, especially for like shitcoins that are relatively new and only have very little information, so you can't really do much TA on them. Just throw these things on and there's a high chance that they will respect it somehow. Right, so let's go back to Bitcoin, and then we'll actually leave this on, or wait, no, I'll deactivate it for a little bit and then activate it later. So let's go and have a look at the vertical grid. Before I do that, let me check. So the options on the horizontal grid are just stylistic choices. So you can change the opacity of the bands, and you can make it a bit more faint. You can change the middle line to solid. You're more of a fan of that, and you can increase their width a bit, so you can make the lines a bit thicker to like highlight the bands a bit better. And those are basically the options that you have. That's pretty much it. Nothing fancy. I don't have any signals or anything of the sorts. Actually, let's leave this a bit lower. Because it kind of is, yeah, maybe I'll add them in the future if there's any sort of like need for them. But basically, if you're, if you want to alert on one of the bands, you can just kind of like make your own, I guess. Like you take a line and just create your own alert there. I think that's just much easier than me coding a whole bunch of different, alerts that you can just kind of do manually anyway. Yeah. So let's go over the vertical grid. The vertical grid is just based on monthly, quarterly, and that kind of stuff. So if we activate the vertical grid, and currently you can see that it's on monthly. This is also opacity. Go to the tooltip, you can see period level opacity. So whenever you see some sort of background color, this number changes the opacity. Vertical grid mode, the second option. So you can choose if you want to have vertical lines on each month. So you can have them quarterly, or you can have Q1. We'll look at these in a sec. And then setting 3 is the drawback limit. So just to kind of save resources, if you're not doing any sort of backtesting and you just want the current month, like the future one and the present one, then you just put it on previous, and it just hides all the rest and just leaves you with the previous month and the next month that we're currently in, basically. Right. So just let's leave this on no limit for now, as we kind of go over it. So as you can see, the quarterly lines, so this is July 1st, this is October 1st, they are a little bit thicker in color, a little bit brighter. So as for the 15th of the month, of the second month of the quarter, which is the midpoint between the Q2 open and the Q3 open, or 4 open, sorry, Q4, Q3, and then right in the middle, right? And then the fainter ones are just the monthly, right? So the 1st of August, 1st of September, and then you have also the 15th in between that, right? If you then switch this to quarterly, it will just hide the monthlies and just leave you with the quarterlies only. There we go, right? So these are all the quarterlies and their midpoints, basically. Right? So now you have a one-to-one range as well on the vertical axis, basically. Let's see, we can then also, if we go on monthly, you can also add the monthly open. Right? So now it highlights the daily candle body of each monthly open. And you can add also, if you want, the daily candle body of the 15th each month. Right? And basically what this will do is it will create sort of a heat wave depending on daily candles of monthly opens and mid-months, basically. Let's deactivate these for now, just have it a bit less intense. And then what you can do is if you switch this to quarterly, it will only use the quarterly ones, right? If you set this to January, it will only take the month of January, right? So now you see the highlights. And again, this is the opacity, just to kind of showcase it, right? You can play with the opacity a bit. Oh, that's a bit much. I think there is a limit, might be limited. I didn't put it in the tooltip, but there might be a limit to like 20 or 40% or something. Yeah, so now it only highlights the month of January of each year, right? And its respective level as a daily candle close or daily candle open. Right? It just kind of creates a boxy around the daily candle. Yeah, and you can kind of, see the levels that has been created on the Januaries, right? So the level, curiously enough, the January of 2018 is exactly the level where DeFi summer in 2019 peaks, right? So this is I built this just for the ease of doing some, research, backtesting, depending on like, you can switch this to February, March. If you're like on an investigative journey as to, which months, which levels, etc., this just makes it very, very easy to flip through all these different levels and kind of figure out what was happening during the time. If you take, for example, Q1, then it highlights all the Q1s of each year, right, with their respective open level, basically. Right, so you can see that we're kind of now interacting with Q1 of 2021. But yeah, I think this kind of is, easy enough to understand. The reason I am so focused on monthly and quarterly levels is because if we zoom in, I hate to, be the bearer of bad news for all those people that are super into the whole fundamentals of crypto and decentralization and all that jazz, is that sadly enough, if you start investigating this, you realize that Bitcoin actually moves quite suspiciously on quarterly dates and mid-quarterly dates, right? So you have the 15th of April right here, right? Marks the peak. We have the 15th of June right here, marks the bottom. We then have the 15th of July, which falls on a Saturday. So if we take the 14th, then we have a top here, and yeah, you kind of start getting the idea, right? What does this mean? What this means is basically that institutions who run on quarterly earnings seem to have a big influence on the market, right? So yeah, that's kind of why I keep track of all these dates, because yeah, you can kind of see like you know, January 1st, boom, off it goes. Right, where does it peak? On the 15th of February, right? So exactly in the midpoint of the quarter, right? Because the quarter starts here, ends here. The midpoint is the 15th or the 14th of February, and yeah, that's kind of like where the initial kind of top comes in, right? Yeah, you can go over the Bitcoin chart and just kind of have a look at these lines, and you'll see that all the kind of pivotal points kind of happen around these dates. I've been like studying this to the point where whenever I try to enter a trade that is like where I try to like catch a larger move, I usually just kind of tend to wait for around those dates, right? So if we're kind of like in the middle of some and there's no near 15th or monthly open nearby, I don't necessarily try to catch a trend breaking move or something, because yeah, those tend to happen around those dates. That's kind of like why I built this thing, because I used to do this manually, but now having it just automated, it's much easier. Saves a lot of time. One thing to note is that it works very well on the crypto charts, because the crypto charts are 24/7. But if you go to something like the SPY, because of the weekends and let me just deactivate this for a second so it's a bit easier to see. These lines tend to be like slightly offset. So because Monday, or like October 1st was on a Sunday, it now opens on Monday, October the 2nd, which then projects the next one to November the 2nd, right? So yeah, because of that, I've tried my best with, and I have some ideas as to like how to compensate for this, but for the time being, I have not been able to get it to such a point that it's completely accurate. Special problem are the holidays, because the holidays are just kind of like so random and weird that it's very hard to kind of code that in an efficient way to get this to line up consistently. So just keep that in mind, that for TradFi markets that have weekends and holidays and stuff, these lines can be slightly off. Right, but for crypto charts, they are spot on because they're 24/7. So, yeah. What else? Let's see. Yeah, so one cool thing is what you can do is actually combine the horizontal and the vertical grid at the same time. And then you'll start noticing something that's even more interesting, is that let's see, let's find some cool ones. Price tends to gravitate towards the vertex, right? So we have a vertex here between the band, and price is right there at that exact moment in time, right? Let's see if we can find some other ones again, right? So 15th of August, projection off the band, we have like a big kind of crosshair there, right? Even though the candle itself is quite far away, there is definitely a spike through a vertex here again, right? Big dump, where does it land? Like right around this, right? The Pico top in 2021. Perfect rejection of another vertex here between the band and the 15th of November. I mean, it missed it by like 1 or 2 candles, but yeah, basically you see another vertex here. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. But yeah, if you have access to the indicator, then you can go on a journey yourself and kind of, you know, go and find all these spots and then do your own backtesting on it and, you know, see what you think about it. I find it quite fascinating, to be honest. And here again, like, yeah, it's off by 1 or 2 days. Curiously enough, this is Saturday and Sunday, but on the Monday, so yeah, right. it just gives you something to think about. Maybe Bitcoin is not as decentralized as one might think. So yeah, this grid is quite powerful in my opinion. And yeah, the way you could use it going forwards into the future is that well, right here. I mean, even yesterday, again, right? That massive candle just straight into the vertex again. You can kind of say like, hey, well, if we get some sort of like, crazy bullish momentum, like this is a spot to look for. If we go to the downside, maybe this is a spot to look for. And if we just kind of do nothing, then maybe this is a spot to look for, right? So that's kind of like how you could apply this to future charting. Yeah, if you want to go really, ham on it, then you can even add the kind of like the heat map of the monthly candles on it. And yeah, it gives you like a quite an interesting view of the levels in the area that we're currently at. So let's see, stream has been going for over an hour again. Oh my god, these videos are so long. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, just as a final note, I've created some alerts here at the bottom, which are just exclusively for the frequency waves and the ribbon. Yeah, because as I said, the vertical and the horizontal grid, I don't really feel that it's needed because you can just do it manually with your own kind of lines. But yeah, if you turn on the wave, then you have all the waves here. So if you want to put an alert on one of the waves because you like, want to have some notification for when it interacts with one of these, then you can use these alerts here. And then one for the main frequency of the ribbon. So that's the central one that governs the bullish or bearish cloud or whatever you want to call it, right? So the center one is the one that has the alert, which is also the one that has a value, right? So right now it's right here, which is this value. Yeah, that pretty much covers it. You want to put an alert, just let's say you want an alert when price interacts with the ribbon because you're like looking for a rejection or something. You tick this on, press OK, go into the alerts, any alert function call, put your expiration date, and then give it a name and create. Off you go. There you have it. That's pretty much it. I think that covers all of it. So yeah, I will leave it here and sign off, and then in the next video we will be covering the overlay, the last one of the 3. I might have to do this in 2 parts because this is kind of the most complicated one, or at least the one with the most features. Yeah, we'll see. So yeah, see you in the next video. Signing off. Have a good night, day, wherever you are, and thanks for tuning in.